welcome to Reverse the Verse, live from Frankfurt, Germany. I am Brian Chambers, Development Director of Frankfurt. Today is September 23rd, 2016. For new viewers that don't know, or just to rehash for people that do know, Reverse the Verse is CIG and Foundry 42's live stream with the fans. We do ATV, which around the verse, that comes out on a Thursday, and on the Friday gives you a chance for us to dig in a little more detail and chat with some of the guys that you saw, give you a little more insight. Also gives us an opportunity to actually take questions from you guys, which is pretty cool. If you want to submit questions, you log on to robertspaceindustries.com. In the chat, and if you post questions, put the word questions within brackets, because those will be the keywords that we pull out. We don't take any of the questions in the Twitch or any others, so we're going to pull them all from there. So be prepped to put your questions in. Today we have two guests. We have Ben Dare, a senior level designer. He showed off the modular satellite, so we'll dig in that a bit more detail. And then we also have Ivo Herzeg showing off the vision stabilization. So we'll pull in with him as well. So yeah, it's our first guest, Ben Dare, senior level designer here in Frankfurt. Thanks for coming.
Cool, yeah, it's nice to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. I know you and the guys are busy.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, that's cool. So why don't you tell everybody, you're a senior level designer, what do you actually do here in Frankfurt for Star Citizen?
Okay, so as a level designer here, my job is to create interesting and diverse environments to populate the universe with. And obviously the universe is big, so that requires a lot of locations that have got to go in there, which from the videos that you've just seen, we're looking a lot about modularity and trying to do research on our individual parts, how best to implement that. And as you saw in the video, I was working on the satellite modularity.
Yeah. So yeah, the satellites, and that was cool. It was cool to see all the parts and pieces and having a system that comes together that creates that amount of variety, right? With that, and jump into it, I'll ask the first one. So with the variety that you have so far with the modular satellite pieces, how did you choose which ones to go for, which satellites to build? Were those based purely on gameplay? I know you had an aesthetic drive for it as well, so you could see the silhouettes. So really, what kind of governed that? So
yeah, it really started with my own research. So looking at the satellites that there currently are in the world, looking at Star Citizen and really thinking what purpose these satellites would serve in the Star Citizen universe.
Yeah.
And then the reason that I chose those three, the defense, communication, and the science, was they were the most distinctive types. And by picking three distinctive types of satellite, it meant that I wrote my documentation, the design documentation for it, and they were a good test to see, if the system is versatile enough to make those three types of satellites, then it should be versatile enough to make any sort of satellite.
Cool. That's cool. That's cool. Speaking of that, and kind of digging in documentation and specific for Star Citizen, I mean, you're in a senior role. It typically means you've been doing this for a little bit of while, so you know what you're doing. How would you say being a level designer on Star Citizen differs from other level design jobs you've had?
There are certainly similarities with it. The process is the same of the research, the 2Ds, the implementation 3D.
Yeah.
But the thing which has been really distinctive for me since starting here is when designing a location, the real authenticity of it. So when I'm working on a location, everything has to serve a purpose. It's not the case of we're putting something in just because it looks pretty. It feels a lot more like being an architect, thinking about what does this location have to do? What are the constraints that would be on this location? And then finding the most elegant solution to all of that. And when that's done well, a player just walking through the location will be able to tell the purpose of the location and the history of the location, and that's something that being a level designer, I find both challenging, but also really rewarding to work in that way.
No, that's cool, because I mean, with the sense of exploration that players are going to have when the universe gets larger and larger and larger and more built out, I mean, it's that concept that if you see it, you can get to it, right?
Yeah.
And if you can get to it, you can explore it. So I mean, yeah, it does have to have its function, you know? So cool. Questions are rolling in now, so let me look through here. First question, are the modular stations going to have interiors established with them, or are they just the basic shape of the satellites?
Yes, so the modular satellites will have some internal playable space.
Okay.
You can think of the current com array. So there's some internal space. In the satellites that I was showing, there was the hub module.
Yeah, we did have that one section where you're flying into, but are the interiors even going to be more expansive than that, or is that still too early on to say?
There will definitely be different interiors, so dependent on the size of the satellite and the purpose that it serves, there'll be different size interiors, and also the interiors will be very, very different depending on what type of satellite it is, whether it's nuclear power or solar power. And yeah, I really like the feeling of when you get into the hub of it, that you can really see the kind of gubbings of the satellite. You know, it doesn't seem like a normal place like you would have on the stations. It's like very, very sort of technical and almost a bit dangerous, you know, to go inside. That'd be really fun.
Awesome. Another question: will satellites be destructible? I mean, I know that we're making these modular pieces, but can they be destroyed? And
so the design is that the modules will definitely be things that you can break and you can repair. Going on from that, we are also exploring if they will be completely destructible, and then how they would be replaced. That's something we're still having an ongoing conversation about. And I think it would be good if that was possible. But
because imagine if that's that, you know, that important satellite that's there that you've owned, or it's whatever, it exists, and then somebody comes by and destroys it and so on, and now there's commodity because you have to replace it and you have to get the parts, and you know, so
yeah, it'd be great, because then, like you say, it leads to interesting gameplay.
Another question, which actually I haven't heard this one. Do some of the satellites use standard ship components such as power generators, coolers, etc., or are they all unique standalone parts just for the satellites?
So the parts will be standalone parts. Okay. But their functionality will be very similar to the things that we'll have in ships, and the way things are repaired and replaced, but they will be specific for satellites. So
I think that does make sense, though. I mean, because a satellite is a specific thing, right? It's not, oh, let me take the satellite part and repair my ship. Right?
Yes. I mean,
that's a little MacGyver. It's kind of cool, but it's not realistic.
Yeah, so they'll be similar, but like you wouldn't use the same components to fix your car as you would your house. So they're definitely going to be different beasts.
Let's see, another question here. Do satellites have pipe systems similar to ships? And will we be able to disable individual systems?
Yes, they will work very similar to the way that ships work with the piping systems, and being able to disable certain systems. Yes, that will be something that happens when you're approaching a satellite. If you're trying to take things offline, that can be something you do externally. So you're causing damage to the satellite, or you're going inside the satellite, hacking the computer, planting viruses. So you've got different approaches to it. But yes, it is similar with the piping system to ships.
Cool. Another question. The satellite construction system looks like it's limited to 90-degree angles. Is that true? And if so, what are you going to do to try to avoid a sort of Minecraft-like look?
Okay. So at present, the modules that I was creating, most of them had these 6 points to join them. And that was so you could grow them out in different axes. But that won't necessarily be the case on all modules, and when I was working, it was very much for a white box prototype type of stage. So they won't necessarily be at 90-degree angles, and I don't envision it becoming like Minecraft, that that those things grow out and become hugely complex. You can look at the things like the space stations as they are now, and the way that they are constructed. That's the kind of some of the inspiration.
But, on the work that we saw, and this is my question, on the work that we saw actually in the video, how far along would you say, as a prototype, because it is still fairly early on, right? Is it, did that take you a few weeks to put together? Did you spend a month on that? And how much further time do you think it's going to take to get it where you guys want it to be?
Yeah, in the amount of time that I spent on that was probably about a month. Okay. To do the research, do some prototyping back and forth. And with something like that, obviously it's not just level design, but speaking to the other designers and getting feedback. But now it's with the art team, and they're working on some concepts. So when it comes back from them, then there'll probably be a little bit more back and forth. But it shouldn't be too long until I can start constructing satellites with the pieces, which is going to be something really, really exciting. I'm quite excited to see the concept.
It's cool, and stuff like this too. I look forward to, in the months ahead, kind of revisiting, showing some of the old footage we shot versus, hey, this is where it is now, and this is how it's functioning, and these are the things that modified and grew and changed. It's cool. Another question: can players control a satellite in any way?
At present, we are designing these satellites to be things that you can interact with. So you can destroy them, you can fix them, you can potentially plant viruses on them. Control them is something that we're not looking at right now, but in the future, that would be great. We'll just have to see how it plays out. I mean, it's very early days, so this is our scope at the moment. But I mean, that would be nice, and we'll just have to see how the process evolves, where it takes us.
Another question. Excuse me. Will some satellites have automated defensive capabilities to protect themselves? And this kind of falls into the destruction as well, right?
Yes.
If we can blow them up, can we set something on that they'll protect?
Yes, most certainly. That will be dependent on whether it's a military satellite, how sensitive the data is on it. But yes, the satellites will certainly be able to defend themselves. So it won't be an easy job to take down a satellite, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to. If you have a team of people, you can take down a satellite, but maybe as you're taking it down, it's firing against you. There's reinforcements coming. So just from this one satellite, there are ramifications that could spiral out. So yes, that will happen most certainly.
That's cool. That's awesome. Another question: will satellites orbit their assigned location?
Sorry, go on. So when I speak about satellites, it isn't typically a satellite orbiting a body. So as there will be objects that you interact with in space, but satellites is just a nice name for them because you can visualize them, and that's what they look like. But they won't necessarily be orbiting a body, a planet.
Okay. Cool. Another question here. Where are they? Well, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what are the different types and purposes of satellites and space stations we'll see? So maybe you can run over just a little bit, because you showed off some of the types and the purposes. And I know it's early on, but if maybe you could go through which ones you've kind of prototyped and what exists.
Yes. So I see the different satellites and the amount of satellites being almost endless, because for science satellites, they could be in a nebula gathering some information. For military satellites, they could be protecting another satellite, they could be protecting a base, there could be a network of them, and communication satellites will again come in all shapes and sizes, and there'll be ones which are huge, have lots of defenses, and then maybe smaller ones on the outreaches. That's the great thing about the modular system, that by creating these modular parts and assembling them in different orders, we can really create custom satellites for any in particular situation. So it's, although there are those main categories, I see under those umbrella terms there being a huge amount of different satellites, different purposes, different parts of the universe, and depending whether near a sun, away from a sun, somewhere scientific, somewhere of military importance. There'll be a huge amount.
That's cool. Awesome. Anything else you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to cover in the short 2-minute video and so far here?
I think we've covered most of it in our chat, but it's been a really good process to go from the initial research even to the early prototype that we've got now. And the more that I worked on it, the more potential that you can see it happening. You know, I see that just one satellite can branch off into all sorts of different gameplay scenarios, which will be really good.
No, it gives us the ability to really kind of customize it, and gives us those Lego pieces, if you will, kind of moving forward, where if we need some additional functionality, we'll have something there and we'll be able to dress it up slightly different and give it new capabilities, new defenses, and so on. So that's cool.
That's the great thing about when you start on anything in this game, that you realize how much potential it has. You know, I was thinking of attacking a satellite, and defenses people might have missions to defend it, other people might have missions to come and fix it, and information can be stolen. You know, it branches off beautifully.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for taking the time.
Cool.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching so far. We will take a very short break. And when we return, we will have Ivo Herzeg here, where we'll push him a little bit more to talk him on vision stabilization. Welcome back. Again, I'm Brian Chambers. We are live from Frankfurt, Foundry 42. Next guest now, Ivo Herzeg, our lead engineer. Lead animation engineer. Thanks for coming on. Cool. So can you tell us a little bit, I know you do a lot here, but can you explain a little bit about what you do here on Star Citizen?
Well, about 12 years ago, I started to develop the core animation system for CryEngine, and here I'm still doing the same.
Yeah.
So this,
awesome.
And just my job is to make sure that we get all the runtime features that we need for the game.
Yeah. And that covers body, that covers face.
That covers face, body, everything, and also the unified rig, and also all the stabilization techniques.
Absolutely. Cool. He's got his hands in a lot of stuff, and we rely on him on a lot of stuff. So your piece on vision stabilization, we put out the first one at 60, so people could see it buttery smooth. It got a lot of press. A lot of people were checking it out and saying really good comments. It looked really cool. A little more detail in ATV, which was awesome, and broke it down. In your piece for ATV, you mentioned using a unified rig. There's all kinds of rigs that are out there. So can you explain a little bit to people out there that are watching what a unified rig is, and why we chose to go the route for Star Citizen.
Okay, that's a little bit of a problem. So before I start to explain what it is and for what we need it, it's a bit easier to just take a look how we do it in a more traditional way when we build a shooter. So when we start with the traditional methods, and that's what I call the split between first and third person rig, then it's pretty easy to get at least a floating camera to work.
Yeah.
All you need for that is a simple rig for the position of the camera and a skeleton for the arms. And if your game is only a single player game, then that's all you need.
That's the best solution. Yeah.
That's why everyone starts with this solution.
Of course.
But games are a little bit more complex than that. And when people walk around and they look down on the ground, they expect to see maybe some parts of the body, maybe the legs and how everything is moving.
Yeah.
And then you have the first problem. You need to add a second rig only to see your own legs in first person. So you need 2 rigs.
Yep.
And every game today is a multiplayer game. That means in multiplayer, other people need to see your body. So you need to add a third rig. That's a full body rig. So that other people can see you in multiplayer. And that's the one we also use for the shadow rendering, that you can see your own shadow in first person. So you need to deal with 3 rigs, 3 skeletons for 1 player.
Wow.
And you need to keep all of them in sync.
Yes.
And that's a big issue. That's the trouble.
With unique animations.
It calls unique animation systems.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally different how we animate first and third person, which means you need a different animation system for first and third person. And you need to keep some of both systems in sync. They run in parallel. And both of them have not much in common. They don't share anything. They both need their own set of animations and their own code logic. And that's the trick. And with a unified rig, well, we have only one single rig, one single skeleton for everything. And we also need to share the animations on both. And that's the tricky part, sharing the animation. Yeah. Making sure we can play them on both rigs.
Absolutely.
So that takes a little bit longer. So it's a bit hard to get all of this started, but I think as a long-term solution, the unified rig will make things a lot easier.
Yeah. Now that we've gone to the point that we have a unified rig, what does that mean for development? What does that mean for the players? Does it have an impact?
Well, it has a lot of impacts. First, you need to develop it.
No, of course. But I mean, once it's out here and now that it exists, that's going to change in a way workflow amount of assets and so on.
There are several points and we didn't even expect them when we worked on it. So first of it reduces the animation count a lot. Yeah. So we need way less animations just to animate the hands and the weapons in first person. And I can give you now a number. For all the weapons we currently have on the screen in Star Citizen. So we need only 50 animation assets, not more. That's what we play at the moment. If you compare it with Crisis 2, we had 1,200. That's a pretty crazy number, just for the hands to animate it.
It's a bit of a difference. Yeah.
Of course, we will not ship the game with 50 animations, but even if we have 150, it's still a lot less. So the system is very compact and it's a pretty elegant solution. Of course, the unified rig.
Slide you a little bit closer so we don't lose you off screen.
Okay. Cool. And so what did I just say? The unified rig.
Yes.
It also forced us to completely rethink the way how we animate or how we will animate in the future. Yeah. Because if you aim in third person, you can move the gun around, but you have only one reload animation. And we have to adapt it to all these different situations, to all these aim directions. Which means every animation we get, and we still use animations, but only for the timing and the style. It goes through a very complex IK system, and we generate the animations kind of at runtime. It gives us a lot of flexibility, but it took a while to get the system up and running.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I mean, I know this is something we spoke about a while ago when I know that we were starting to explore the unified rig, and I know even in your past experience saying that it was going to be a huge challenge and that it was going to take quite a bit of time. So I mean, I think even from your own perspective, the progress has been incredibly quick to get us at least to where we're at now.
Okay, there are actually more points, because now the rigs are the same. We don't just have less animations, we can even share them
with
the third-person model.
And that's a huge point.
So that's a double advantage.
That's cool.
And then maybe the biggest advantage of the whole system, what I call the killer advantages, for the first time we can really use different, or we can combine different techniques to animate characters.
Yeah.
We can use animation assets, we can use inverse kinematics, and we can use physics simulations, all on the same body and on different joints, which is pretty cool. And a practical example that we have at the moment in the game, that's our implementation of EVA. And that's a gameplay feature.
Yeah.
And in this feature, you are actually a ragdoll, a real ragdoll. And if you think about it, it's a bit crazy. You jump over this platform, you are in space, you are floating around, and from that moment on, every single joint is going through a physics system. Yeah. It's a physical simulation. It's a bit hard to imagine.
It is a bit crazy.
And it's a bit crazy. And it took also a while to get these things to work. We started already in December on this. But I think no one ever tried that before, to have a fully physicalized body. We tried it in Crisis 1. We had a 0G level. It did a score level, but it was only a floating head with a collider sphere. And there was no multiplayer, no third person. So what we have now is actually pretty interesting.
And this goes back to, I mean, a couple of points that Ivo was mentioning. I mean, some of these things take time, but I've always said in a couple other things that, you know, we need to take the time to build a proper foundation to be able to have the scalability that ultimately we're going to have. So if we look at where we need to be in 3, 6, 9 months, you need to make the decisions now, even though they may take a little bit longer to go, cool, let's sort out the unified rig, because we know long-term it's going to have a huge benefit.
Long-term, yes.
And when we talk about being in space in this vast universe, having a proper solution for EVA, where you're going to get proper physics when you're bouncing into things, is something that you want to take some time on, because it's going to be all over the place, right? So that's cool. Let me dig into some of the questions here. Here's one I hadn't thought about. Does the stabilization that you've done impact mouse responsiveness like mouse smoothing would?
Absolutely not. These things are absolutely not connected. One thing, because I had this moving, I wanted to show one single feature. I wanted to show that this, how to say it, kangaroo effect, this head bobbing is gone. And the only way to show it is to remove all the other noise from the screen. Because if I have high mouse sensitivity and I move the mouse 1 millimeter, the whole screen is jumping left and right. Then I can't really show any progress. So one way is you use a controller. That's one way. That's industry standard. That's how you get this smoothness. Or you put a filter on the mouse of 1 millisecond just for this video effect. So that's the only reason. But it has absolutely no effect on the controls.
Another question. How will stabilization work when looking through the iron sight? Is the head subordinated to the gun or the other way around?
It has no big impact in that case at all. When you're looking through the iron sight, you just align the scope or the iron sight with the left eye. That's the only thing. There is no big difference.
You mean the right eye?
Okay, right eye,
It's okay. Sometimes they don't know their right from left, but you know, it's good. Another question. So what we saw in the video, in regards to the work that's done so far, would you say that, you know, how far along is that? Is that kind of, we're done with vision stabilization and we're moving on? Or is there further work that you need to do there? Okay,
no, this is a really tricky question. I doubt the work is done. That's very unlikely. I mean, just last week we had this huge refactoring with all the aim poses to make the transition smoother and also improve EVA. And we are just at the beginning to understanding what makes movement on the ground feel natural. Because what we had before was not real. And the interesting thing is, head bobbing for some reason is no issue when you are sprinting. If you saw my video, in all the sprinting it was turned off. We can tweak this issue per asset. so animators can tweak it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. For one locomotion, you need perfect stabilization. For another, it doesn't matter. And all the other games, like Call of Duty Battlefield, they even have this camera roll. It's pretty extreme when you're sprinting, and nobody complains about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And one thing we don't want at all, nobody wants it. We don't want it that walking on the ground feels like floating in EVA.
No, of course.
So
yes, absolutely.
That's a lot of fine tuning. We don't quite
I mean,
understand
also because if you think of the design, and you know, the guys have suits on. You know, these things have weight and they have armor and so on. So I mean, yeah, we want people to feel solid and be planted. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Are you afraid that head stabilization will make character models look too much like birds when viewed in third person?
No.
Yeah, you heard
absolutely
it.
not.
So yeah, I mean, but that is one thing. I mean, in part of the R&D and to get where you were, I mean, not only was it to get it stable in the first person, but also to look natural as we want, either, you know, firmly planted or so on in third person, right?
In some way, and in third person, the difference visually, it's actually really hard to see. I mean, you have this camera with this helmet, and you have some leeway. You can move the camera around to keep it stable. And we visualized all these curves we get when we have head bobbing. And the movement on the motion data was not that much, but this little movement, this plus minus 3 centimeters, was already enough to drive some people crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the only thing we reduced. And maybe if we do some very extreme motions like this immediate sliding stop, where you strafe to the side and you go down, then maybe we have to adjust the spine a little bit. That's when you can see it, if you know exactly where to look for. Not in that case. But
in those cases, though, you know, and it's always hard, animations and so on. I mean, if we're reviewing one asset over and over and over for detail, by the time you're in game and you see that asset play out in third person and camera movements and there's explosions on screen and everything else is going on, you really don't notice any of those tweaks that you would actually need to make in order to make it.
It's very hard to see.
Yeah. Another question. How does stabilization work when you fall down? Does it get disabled at that point? Do we know yet?
It gets disabled when you fall down. It gets disabled when you go from stand to crouch. We don't need it when you're sitting. We need it only for this everyday motions like normal walking and jogging.
So you've already worked it into the system then, where it's intelligent, where we can go, okay, during this, this is here.
I already, I planned the framework to make a decision, so animators can decide when does it make sense.
That's cool.
That it's completely turned off, and for which motions do we need it. But we still need to do some testing to find the right balance.
Awesome. Could a similar stabilization model be applied with ship turrets?
For what? Turrets?
I don't know if that means while shooting them. I'm not clear on this. We'll move on to the next. One question that I saw earlier today on the forums as well was they did ask about how you recorded it, that if you did use with mouse or if you used a gamepad. And when they're talking about the 61 that you put out.
Okay, first of all, the PC is fast. That's one thing. And when we work on one feature for a longer time, and several people needs to work on it, we always start with a simplified level. That's what we build.
Of course.
First,
well, you need to accurately gauge that one thing you're on.
Exactly. And also we want very fast turnaround times. So when you shoot 3 bottles, you don't need the whole universe around you. So we created a special levels with the geometry with parts from Port Olisar, and that's what we use for testing.
And gamepad or mouse?
Mouse. It was mouse. Mouse, and for the video, only for the video, I'm using this filter of 1 millisecond to make it. It looks better on video, but of course, if you play it yourself, you want this full responsiveness. But if other people see you playing, I think you need this kind of smoothness. That's the reason why everyone in Hollywood tries to get the camera stable and have camera stabilizer. People like smooth images. Nobody likes this first-person shooter mouse jump in all directions.
Here's another question, which is a little subjective, but it'll speak to some of the choices you've made. Shouldn't the visor bounce a little even with eye stabilization? I can imagine a motorcycle helmet bounce around just a little when you move a lot. In the FPS demos, the corners of the helmet glass seemed like they were glued to the camera.
That was maybe an older build. I think for 2.5 they bounce. We have it already. And at the moment, the helmet bouncing is our way to communicate to the player that you are actually walking. That's the difference between EVA, the helmet bouncing.
Okay.
And when you have a gun in front of you, you see that the hand's moving. In that case, the hands talk. The hands tell you what the rest of the body is doing.
Okay.
So that's how we do this.
But it was a conscious choice then, as far as the helmet, to keep it as stable as it
was just not implemented, this helmet movement.
Okay. Anything else you want to cover that we didn't get to cover, or I didn't ask you, or the fans didn't ask you?
Well, I mean, this was a pretty long development. I think did we ever talk about the vestibular ocular reflex?
No,
nobody wants to hear about that. It's something Jean Tracy started. It's all his fault.
Absolutely. And, that is the term for the human GPS system.
Exactly. Yes, you have these two motion detectors in your ears, and you have the rotation detectors in the eyes, and it's basically a GPS in your head. It tells the brain the body is moving. The brain needs to react to it somehow. And the first thing they're doing is controlling the eyes with this stabilization. And it's also making sure that we always focus on the things that are important for us. It's a very fast adjustment. And for a very long time, I thought that's the solution. But the problem is, if you have a monitor and the image already moves, you can't get it stable anymore by looking at it. It's already too late.
It's already moving.
So this plan didn't work at all. And then chickens. We tried with chickens.
Where did you come up? Where did you first? Did you accidentally find that video? When you hear you talk in the video and explain it, and you see the video of the chicken, it's just bam, it absolutely makes sense. And it's almost comical to go, oh, let's try that, right? But at the same time, it's incredibly brilliant to go, okay, would this work? Because there is a system there that is...
I think this was more the result of a weird Google search and a coincidence. And just because humans can roll the eyes, then it's pretty natural to ask, how does it work? If you
so
can't
just
roll the
in
eyes,
searching through,
is there an animal who can walk at all if they can't roll the eyes and keep the vision stable? And then step by step we started with this. And before we did a lot of experiments with IK, so we had something running, it just didn't look too cool. And when I found this video with the chicken, I mean, there's a pretty elegant way how it's counterbalancing the head and how it's moving the neck and everything. And then we developed this accordion IK, how we called it, and applied it to the whole spine.
Yeah, I mean, as far as science goes and looking at that in the video and what you're talking about, it's just kind of like, bing, it absolutely pulled it all together. So that's cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're incredibly busy with what you do, but I appreciate how you push it on stuff and driving it where it needs to go. I know your hands are full on a lot of things. So awesome. That just about finishes us up. Just a reminder, a couple of reminders. Our weekly newsletter will be mailed out later today on this Friday, so make sure you check your inboxes for that. And also this coming weekend in San Diego, California is Twitchcon. We will have Tyler, Jared, and Ben there. I think they're just going to be roaming around and hanging out and meeting up with people. So if you get a chance, definitely, run up to them and say hi. It's fun to be able to do these shows, and we're able to do these shows because of the subscribers and the fans and the backers. So thank you so much for backing what we do. We love what we do and bringing this whole universe to life. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.